Hey everybody, I think we're on now. Yes, we are. I can see the participant numbers rising as we're talking. So first and foremost, really happy to have everybody here. Thanks for coming on to another Leadfeeder webinar this week. It's been a couple of weeks since we did the last one. We did one with Morgan Ingram there a couple of weeks ago, which went down really well as well, focusing on video content. We're just focusing on, how to create more connects at the top of the funnel when you're doing your outbound outreach using video, which is super interesting. Off the back of that, then I've been speaking with Dale, who's our guest for today, Dale Dupree, with his awesome background back there, I have to say. Super on brand. So just a couple of things before we get going. Just some housekeeping rules. Just if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat. Like myself and Dale were just speaking there a couple of minutes ago, just around, how we'd attack this. Like we're going to keep it super open, super interactive. If you have any questions, we'll try to answer them on the fly on that. But yeah, really excited to getting into it. So the title of the webinar is New Q for Get To. It's just focus on creating growth in Q3. That title there is super cringe, but I regret nothing. New Q for Get To, like I wrote it and I was like, the team were like, oh, Andy, really? I was like, yeah, well, why not? But anyway, so we're going to focus today on creating pipeline for Q3. So speakers, myself, I'll just do a quick intro and a quick overview of the topic and some stuff that we were focused on for Q2. And then I'll hand it over to our awesome guest today, Dale. And from Dale's perspective, I've been following his stuff on LinkedIn for a little while. I just love his honesty, to be honest. Like from my perspective, seeing like how he talks about things, how he approaches sales. It's just like, it's just a regular dude that's not trying to be anything that he's not, and also just how he's creating relationships with his prospects is super interesting to me. It's creating like a relationship with another human being and then that blossoming then into a sale, right? Like from my side, I hate this like systematic robotic approach to contacting prospects because in my opinion, it doesn't work. Like, especially when it comes to like enterprise size deals or anything that's got larger ticket sizes, you have to be creating a relationship and people have to trust you. And that's exactly what Dale is doing. And the sales rebellion is exactly why Dale has set that up, is to focus on creating that value or creating those relationships or creating those community, as he calls it, amongst your prospects. Because he says your territory is your community, and create a community out of that territory, and that's going to lead to massive gold, basically. Have I done you justice there, Dale?
Killing it, dude. Killing it. Hype, man.
Thanks, man. Okay, so look, let's start over with a quick overview of Q2, right? So I've decided to do this a little bit more interesting and look at Q2 in the form of memes, right? So I think most of these things will hit home for everybody on this call, especially if you're in sales. So, this one came up. So 17th of March, by the way, is St. Patrick's Day. And as an Irishman, I remember looking at this in St. Patrick's Day being like, oh yeah, well, of course, right? So I remember back then even, because I'm like a sales focused marketer, saying to our sales team and saying to other sales people, like, so what's going on? What have we got in the pipe for today? What should we be expecting before the end of the day, right? Then there's also, when you look at the forecast, and this is something that we're talking about now, building pipeline, this is something that I remember just seeing these things unfold at the time. I was like, this is like super accurate, right? So your manager, when you ask about your forecast, you tell them it's more of a 3-cast, right? Again, our focus on the topic today is about building pipeline, right? Nothing there, right? Q2 was so rough when it came to pipeline build. You had to be doing something super interesting in order to build a pipeline, or it had to be super relevant towards your audience. That didn't mean to say that there wasn't pipeline being built. It was possible to build pipeline, but incredibly difficult. Even for sales superstars, they were finding it incredibly difficult. But I think the ones that didn't say, hey, like I can just rest up a little bit now because there's nothing I can do anyway, I think they're the ones that are really struggling right now. Whereas the people that said, okay, look, we're in a situation now where things are difficult. We know that. But what can we be doing differently in order to get in front of the prospect, right? And pipeline may not have opened in Q2, but I think going into Q3, they'll start to see things being open for them. At the end of Q2, looking at, okay, how's my current sales pipeline looking? And this was a quick question to many salespeople. So what have we got in the pipe? Well, it may look like this car. And at the end of the day, when we're looking at the rest of 2020, you could be looking at your sales career like going down that ladder there into a drain. So last one, I promise on this, okay, and then I'll get over the misery of Q2. But okay, this is really the last one, I promise. But look, there was some good news, okay? So across that, there were people still closing deals, right? So we actually at Leadfeeder closed our biggest deal ever in Q2, right? So we closed it, the biggest deal in the history of the company. We did that through a mixture of doing account-based marketing, and it's really good relationship building from the account manager that was working that account. Okay, things could have gone a bit quiet within the account, but we made sure that we were targeting them properly. We hit them up with some good content, really good outreach from our salesperson, making sure that we were doing all we could do to help them most during the current situation. And it turned into business then. And we managed to close, like, as I said, the biggest deal in the company's history. And I think that happened in March, right? Again, there were other people closing deals as well, you know? I've heard, like, even speaking with Dale now, you know, he's got his own company, which focuses on a sales consultancy. And he's like, he's everywhere at the moment, right? He's smashing it in terms of sales targets, from what I believe. Prior to the call, we were just talking about how busy he is at the moment. Guy's hopping on a plane tonight to go train 250 people, right? So like there's stuff happening, and it's about people staying on top of the pipeline that they already had existing, and then looking to bring that all the way through to the close. We do have more good news as well in terms of signs and signals that are coming from the market. So first of all, Q2 is over. That's the first bit of good news. But even more, I've been speaking with the guys from Connect and Sell, who basically their job is to make sure that you get more connects when you've got an outbound team. Okay, so they've been looking at like month-on-month figures, and they over the month of June they were looking at figures of 8 million dials. Okay, and the month-on-month connection rate from those 8 million dials was that they were seeing that connects had actually gone up overall. So actually managing to get somebody at the end of the line and book a meeting had gone from 3% up to 5% across those 8 million dials that they do a month. So first of all, that shows like, hey, it's actually interesting that people are picking up the phone and that they're willing to book a meeting, which would, you know, shows me that people are willing to take the next step to start getting back to some form of normality, at least when it comes to business. And also people are in the market again for buying things. If people are putting meetings into their calendar, they're not doing it for no reason. They're doing it because they're looking for solutions. And on top of that, an even more interesting one, if you ask me, is actually getting in front of the right people. So they've actually seen a jump from 4% to 5% in terms of actually getting in touch with tech leaders. So this is from the tech industry. And they've been managing to get in touch with C-level executives, for example, who are key decision makers. So actually being able to get in front of your key decision makers has gotten easier month on month. Okay. So it's actually really, really good signs. And coming into Q3, I think this is really important. And with that, I think we need to focus on, like, when we're looking at the rest of the Q and looking at the rest of the rest of H2, don't be this guy, be this guy. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dale, who's then going to bring us through how he's leading the sales rebellion.
Awesome. I love all the memes. That's my game for sure. Memes and everything. There's some people out there that are not big fans of memes in the sales world, but I seriously have never had a problem with them. When I'm using something like a GIF or something like a meme, when I'm speaking to somebody, it's more personal, right? From that perspective, that's what how most people see it, at least I should say. So I love the way that you did it. Did I see a Daniel Disney meme in there at some point? Did you steal any from him?
Dan's memes appear quite often. Yeah, Dan is a close friend of Leadfeeder.
Yeah, Dan is pretty awesome. So I want to start by thanking everybody at Leadfeeder for having me on. I really appreciate it very much. It's awesome getting to see you face to face as well too, because I know we've bantered back and forth through social, and so it's always good to just like be in front of somebody, right? Even if it's over Zoom. It's the COVID-19 version of being in front of somebody, right? That's the good stuff. So I appreciate everybody that showed up today as well too. I'm excited to talk more about building your pipe, and I'm going to do it in a way that pretty much nobody probably expected for it to be talked about, right? Like, that's what we do with the Sales Rebellion, though. We change the game, baby. That's it. So for those of you that don't know who I am, like I said, my name is Dale Dupree, more commonly known as the Copier Warrior, as you can see in this picture. I spent 13 years selling B2B commodity product door to door, and it beat my butt but I'll tell you that it only beat my butt for the first 2 years, right? After those first 2 years, I had developed a sales aptitude. I had figured out the specifics around building relationships inside of the sales game, right? Which a lot of people told me in the beginning, hey, this can't be done. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go, because I want to give people real tangible concepts here and ideas. I also want to help people to gain aptitude through my experience and knowledge as well too. I believe in that. I believe that when you sit in a room with 10 people that have done things that you've never done, when you hear them tell their stories, when you hear them talk about their experiences, you can take those things and apply them to your walk, and from the perception standpoint of how they will affect you and affect your actions specifically. So the first place I like to start is, where did the copier warrior begin? When he was out beating the streets, right? And anybody that's ever done door-to-door sales, and I got started in 2007. I mean, talk about the worst time to get into sales, right? And I bought a house in 2007. So I was making extremely poor decisions at this point in my life. Anybody that's younger than 30 years old right now, let me just tell you, 2007 was not a good year. There was a mini recession that turned into a pretty major recession, to be quite frank. That affected a lot of people. My father's business lost over $500,000 in revenue, and he is who I went to work for at that point in my story. I'd been touring in a band on Warner Brothers Music Group up until then. So when it comes to what kind of business acumen I had until that point, that'll give you the gist of it. 5 years of banging my head and playing on random stages all over the United States, Canada, a couple other countries. So I didn't really have any kind of business acumen whatsoever. Well, at least the way that people perceive it. So I had long hair, big earrings. My beard was like down to my chest. I mean, I looked different, but I was extremely authentic, right? And I still am, because I'm still loud as hell, right? With everything that I do, sales rebellion on everything. But I do it in a way, again, that's a little bit more accommodating to the people that I'm around as well too, because that's an awareness of others. There are two extremely key concepts around this idea of building your business. One being awareness of self, first and foremost. Until you're aware of yourself, you can't be aware of others to begin with, right? And once you're aware of others, then you can have situational awareness. So let's jump into this picture. Situational awareness would apply to this. You got the insurance company, the bank, the realtor, the bookstore. You got this vast territory sitting in front of you. It's expansive. It's kind of intimidating. Maybe you're fresh to sales, maybe you've been in it for years. But this thing, no matter how you look at it, if you're looking at it as a territory, you're not getting everything out of it that you want. Let's take the insurance office, for example. The insurance office, especially in the sales world, from the perspective of copier sales, it was a coveted account. Anybody that had their name and that they were selling insurance, they were printing like crazy, right? And so they needed a lot of the products that we sold inside of our vertical as well too, not just the copiers, but a lot of the evolving softwares that were coming into play at that point in time and inside of the tech world. And so they could be a massive win for you. And so they were very coveted, but usually when you went into a place like that, they would tell you, we already have a vendor. We're not interested. Let's take the bank. Another great one for copier people. I mean, these people are still printing the same amount that they were printing back in 2007, 13 years later, right? So they're the people keeping the copier industry alive. Shout out to banks. But again, high security. You can't just roll up in that beast and say, let me speak to the manager. It just don't work like that, right? So a coveted account though, inside of a territory. Realtors, right? Realtors are very coveted as well too, inside of the copier world. And mostly from the perspective of their bright and shiny face on everything. You see the park bench with their advertisement on it, right? Like planes flying overhead, buy a house from me. I mean, those people are in the community. They're rampant, right? You'll have 250 under one broker, and then you'll have 1,000, different offices within the 150-mile radius. So they're everywhere, right? And they're an easy sale because there's so many of them. Not every copier guy can get to them, and so it's like finding the right one. And then everybody that's sitting in here and looking at this, they're looking at the bookstore and they're like, "What is that? Why would I sell to them?" I bet there's nobody on this webinar right now that sells to bookstores. And if there is, shout out to you and hit us in the chat. But this is where I'm going to start to play toward perceptions of your territory and this idea of what it looks like to actually fill your pipe right now. To understand everything that I just told you about this territory that we're looking at for the copier warrior, do you feel the same way about yours? Could you give me that kind of information? Could you talk to me about, Bob Felicia and his insurance agencies and how he's got 2 locations, and that Jennifer is at the front and one processing team is in this territory, right? Sales team is in that territory. How well do you know the people that you're prospecting? Because that's what matters most to them. What do you know about me? Why should I even care who you are? Oh, hey, I'm selling this product. I can save you money. I can save you time. I can create efficiencies. I can build an ROI. Who cares? Nobody cares. And so with COVID-19, what do you think people are hearing when you're calling them up? Oh my God, stop bothering me. Why are you people still in existence in the first place, right? Let me speak to your boss. It's probably the first time a lot of people have started to hear from their owner or their boss saying like, hey, stop making cold calls. We're getting the complaints, right? And so I'm not saying that cold calls are bad by any means. Cold calls, I lived and breathed by them. I love them, right? They are a piece of me that created the existence that I had in regards to my wealth, in regards to my reputation, right? Important things, my legacy. So there's nothing wrong with a cold call. It's the way that we perform them that sucks, and the knowledge and aptitude that we have of our territory that sucks, and why your pipeline is rusted, leaky, and broken, right? And so coming back to the bookstore here, with all that aptitude, where did the people that make the decisions at these types of organizations hang out? What do they do, right? And so I'm going to tell you a story about Dave's Bike Shop. It's very similar to a bookstore, right? It's a consumer product in there. Typically the people that are inside there are paying like $10 to $100 for something specific, whether it's a pump or a tire or fixing the bike, right? Same goes for a bookstore. The average transaction, I think in a bookstore is like $11 or $12, something like that. They're not spending $12,000 on copiers at a bookstore, right? Which is the bottom line, but it's a hub, right? And so Dave's Bike Shop, I made a cold call to them. They had this little brother printer sitting behind the guy at the front desk. And I would say that probably 99% of copier people I would say that 100% of copier people will be split down the middle about how they would perceive that. One group would say, oh, that little dinky thing that costs $500, that's not worth my time. And the second group would be like, oh my God, my quota sucks, and any amount of dollar going toward it would help me. And so I'll waste all my time on this if I have to. And I'll find 10 more just like it. It's a scarcity mentality. It's scarcity on both sides as well, too. I want you to understand that even the person that says this isn't worth my time, it has a scarcity mentality, because they're thinking to themselves, oh, I need to give my time to things that are going to make me money. This type of place is a catalyst for some of the best business that you ever done. Because I walked up to the front and said, Dave, what's up? My name's Dale Dupree. My friends call me the copier warrior. I typically help people with that little dinky thing sitting behind you that you scream at once a week. But this is the thing, is that I have no desire to sell you something to replace it. What I desire is to get to know you better, because I know that all the C-level executives around here that do the 5Ks and ride their bikes come to you for help. And so I want to earn your trust and credibility and build a relationship with you so that I can meet these people, because I'm a young kid getting started in this industry and I don't know nobody, dude. And the only way to be able to get to that place of a Dave's Bike Shop where, you sit in front of guys that are worth $1 million coming down here to just get a couple of their tires, put some air in them so that they can go hang out with their kids, that there's power in that, right? And the good kind of power that I want to be a part of, and not to wield, right? But to help defend, right? To build a community. And I'll tell you straight up that when you do things like that, and when you have a focus like that, typically people look at you like you've got 18 heads, not 2, 18, right? They look at you as if like, no, you're not real. Like, this is a dream that's happening right now. So, but again, the big picture here is what you're building with them, because it's also an interruption to the typical cold call that they get, and the typical to anything that they experience in general. People typically aren't coming in and saying, how do we build something together? How do I earn credibility from you? I don't even care about selling you something. Right. Matter of fact, you give me enough referrals, you'll get free stuff from me. Hell, you'll get to come over and have barbecue with the family and swim in the pool. And you can bring your whole family too. We'll just give you the keys and leave the house and let you hang out. That's the concept of creating a cohesiveness inside of a community. And so suddenly the bookstore becomes the catalyst to the realtor, the catalyst to the bank, and the catalyst to the insurance agency. Because I like to use the bookstore because Gary Vee talks about it, and everybody likes or follows, I shouldn't say likes, Gary Vee, right? And one of the things that C-levels like him talk about is growth. How do people grow? How are people getting, ideas and concepts and getting better, right? We'll go to Gary Vee and listen to what he has to say. Read his book. Read his book. Who's reading Gary Vee's books? All the people that run these businesses, right? To get better. They're going to that bookstore. So you can run into a man worth $20 million that runs like an $800 million manufacturing firm getting Gary Vee's book at that bookstore. And I'm not saying that you should sit in the aisle with your trench coat on, like, hey, you want a copy machine? I got a copy machine, got printers here. I'm not talking about wheeling and dealing within the bookstore, but I'm not talking about using it as a catalyst to building communities, right? What about a book club specifically? They typically are founded around the concept of the local bookstore to begin with. They always have been. These are things that are totally, they're not native to people these days, right? They're very, as a matter of fact, it's like, what are you talking about? Just like if I were to tell you that the first CD that my band ever released, yeah, that's right, I said CD, was something that you put in to a record player or into your car, right? And now that doesn't even exist anymore, right? But again, the idea of the bookstore and the bike shop is that they are still around. They might not be as hot of a spot as they used to be, because you can download a book right to your phone these days, but conceptualize what I'm talking about here. Understand this bigger picture perspective. And this is the thing that I want to tackle before we jump into the next slide and keep this conversation going, is I want to talk about the relationship sell, right? Maybe at the bank, in the insurance office, and the realtor brokerage firm, like you're not going to necessarily have just one decision maker at these places, but probably you do, right? But let's just say that you're selling more of a complex product, and you got 6 people that sit on a board, a CIO and a CFO, right? So you got these people over here that hang out, and then these single individuals that you got to go through a process to get all these people. People say all the time, they say, you can't build a relationship with all those people. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. You can't build a relationship with all these people, but guess what you can do? You can build for yourself the personal brand that's going to create the whisper, that's going to create the rumor, that's going to create the reality around who you are, right? So suddenly we're not talking so much about whether or not it's a relationship as much as we're talking about what kind of credibility are you actually building inside of these accounts, right? When these 2 people that go to these 6 other people with your proposal to present it, when they go to present it, are they saying, if you're a challenger sell person, are they saying, yeah, this person, really gave us some things to think about, right? Or are they saying, Dale Dupree is probably one of the craziest salespeople we ever met in our life, and I believe wholeheartedly that he will do things that no one else is talking about doing. It's a reputation. Salespeople have completely gotten away from a reputation. Going back to the realtor, how does the realtor stay so knit tight in their community? Reputation. If you buy a house and it's a sucky process, what happens? You never buy a house from that person again, right? That person becomes a commodity. They can become a transaction. And slowly over time, they burn enough people that they have to move to another state and sell real estate somewhere else. And that's a reality, right? And so inside of the products that you're selling and what it is that you're doing, you have to remember this idea of exploring this community and this territory and what that really looks like. Because this is the biggest factor that we want to really discuss here, is that people that make the decision around the product that you sell, they're busy. Hell, I mean, even right now during COVID-19, if they're at home, doesn't mean they're not busy all of a sudden, right? It actually means they're probably busier, because not only do they have this busy desk with all this paperwork and a coffee to refill and emails to go through and voicemails to get back to and crap to do in general, right? They've also got kids screaming in the background, right? They got their wife being like, honey, can you take 5 minutes? And they got their husband going, hey, babe, I can't handle the kids anymore. That's the reality, right? And because of these things, we have to understand that the only thing that's really going to build pipeline in Q3 and Q4 is A, a proactive approach to that situation, and B, experiential sales. This concept of stop dialing somebody and just giving them this regular raw old talk track, and start picking up the phone and giving people experiential or experiences inside of the pitch before the pitch even happens, right, in the first place. And so a big piece of this for us inside of the Sales Rebellion is we like to call them market tools. And the idea behind them is that they are physical in most cases. So they're like props. Right? Like we like to describe this process as Disney World for sales, right? Where you go to a place like Disney World and the whole time you're having an experience. When you get in the queue to get on the ride, it's actually probably more entertaining than the ride itself, right? Because they keep you engaged, they keep you excited, right? And it's very relatable to a sale, right? But by the time you get to paperwork is boring. Negotiations are annoying. They're nonsense, right? But if you can get somebody so excited about doing business with you that the paperwork suddenly becomes this like sacred thing, the ride, you know, itself, it's like, oh, this is what it's all about. Like, I'm so excited to get to this place to start the adventure to begin with, right? Even though we've been on it the whole time through the queue, right? To get on the ride in the first place. Yeah. So I would tell people a couple things that I want to mention real quickly is number one is that if you haven't been building your pipeline up until this point, like throughout the course of the year or throughout the course of the last 4 years, if you've been in sales for quite some time, you're definitely missing out on things that can make your life so much easier as a sales professional to begin with. We have a concept called the living pipeline inside of the Sales Rebellion, which is that if someone tells you to any capacity that they are a living, breathing human being that has the product that you sell from somebody else, they are a prospect. Even if they tell you they're happy and they're not interested right now. Because I'll tell you what, for the next 4 years in the copier world, when you heard somebody say, yep, we just signed a lease 12 months ago, and it was a 5-year lease, that sales rep that sold them that copier would be gone for the next 4 years. When there's a problem, they'd probably forward an email, right? And send them back something, you know, along the lines of, oh man, I'm so sorry to hear you're having problems. As they sit back, you know, with their legs propped up over a chair, cashing more commission checks from other sales, right? The total, exactly what you're thinking, the total stereotype of sales, right? But if Dale Dupree came along behind you, you would fear the fact that I existed. And in a very unhealthy way too. You know, I had like the run-ins I had with other sales reps were wild, man. I have on gold parchment paper, I had it printed professionally for me. I have 3 different letters from 3 different salespeople that were the top dogs in the industry inside of my territories that wrote letters to my decision makers after they lost me, trashing me, talking about crazy stuff that I won't repeat in this. But if you're ever at my house, I'll show you. It was pretty epic, dude. I remember the first time I read one and I thought, wow, like I did this. Like I drove someone this insane over the fact that I built a relationship. And what they had was surface level bullshit that they believed was something more, right? But it's because they constantly lied to themselves to begin with, right? Constantly throughout their sales cycles. Oh, I've had this account for 25 years. Who cares if you've had it for 25 years? Because I just cold called them and I passed out 12 super soakers with their company logos on them, and they work with hydro equipment. And so it's nuanced and themed to their business. And I talked about specifically how the super soaker relates back to my product and service. And then I also said, have fun having a war with one another inside of the production room, right? An experience, something they've never had before. And then it wasn't just a one and done. It was the next 4 years I built a relationship with them. And the relationship isn't the way that so many people describe it. You don't got to take them to pizza every Friday night. You don't have to call them every 5 minutes and check in on them, right? You can see somebody once a year and build a relationship with them. Anybody listening right now, think about it for a second. How many people do you have in your life that you maybe hear from once or twice a year in the first place, every 6 months? And when you pick up the phone, it's like, what's up? It's so good to hear from you. That's the concept. And if you don't have relationships in your life like that, I would encourage you to find some, because they're life-changing. They truly are. When you have a connection with somebody so deep and so natural that there's nothing that can stand in the way between the two of you, to include them doing business with somebody else. Because that's happened to me as well too. Matter of fact, in some cases, it's been recommended by me, right? Because I take care of my community. It's not a territory, right? And so that's just a couple of little extra thoughts to throw in the middle of this while we're looking at this busy desk, right? Because this is the place when it starts. This is a sacred land, this busy city and environment, right? At this busy desk that most people dread sitting behind in the first place, because we were not made as human beings to work all day from 8 to 5. That's not why we were created. Whether you believe in God or evolution, that's the bottom line, right? we didn't grow arms and legs, if you're an evolutionist, to go to work from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. It's not our natural state as human beings. But what is our natural state is community, fellowship, It's being extremely transparent with people. It's being able to help them grow and to evolve and to feel worth something inside of their life walk. And I did it selling a copier. So don't give me some bullshit excuse about how you can't do it, right? I was going to Thanksgiving dinners. I was going to people's baptisms out at the beach, bro. And that's real life, because that's what it is. It's just connecting these two together, without having to tell somebody about the rash that you've had on your butt for the last 5 years. I mean, like, there's also obviously, like, there's too much information at some point in time as well, too. So it's not a fine line, though. It's common sense. What can I share with this person? How can I make them better? What brings value and impact? Not just like, how do I express some things to them to make them feel like I'm closer to them, like to tell them the name of my great Aunt Susie. Who cares about that stuff, right? It's those things come naturally within conversation over time, right?
I think, like, just before you move on to the next slide there, man, I fully agree with you on that. Like, I think it's like, there was one question that came in from the chat, just from a guy called Phil Robertson, just asked, what if you're new to sales? How do you get started? Like, something like, myself and my wife spoke about this last night. She's an introvert. Okay. Like, we're like chalk and cheese. Like, we're very, very opposite. I'm an extrovert. She's an introvert, but I think that's why we work so well, And she says, like, she was reading this like ebook about like how to network. Okay. Like, super old school, how to network. And she was like, there was one tip in there. She was like, Andy, like, should I just like reach out to people and say happy birthday to them? Is that going to be like, is that weird? I said, no, like, you're just, acknowledging something nice for somebody. And, other people may not be doing that. And that's a little touch point in the entire relationship. As you said, like, you've got that buddy that you call up once a year or something, or an acquaintance, whatever it might be, that you just, boom, there's a snap there, and it works to only have it once a year. And the same goes for, like, if you're building out like your pipeline, for example, if you're starting this now, do little things. Like, it doesn't need to be anything grandiose, like, pick up the phone, ask them how they're doing. And if it's their birthday, hey man, it's your birthday, happy birthday. It's not that hard. That's my personal experience. I don't know what you think there, mate.
Yeah, I would tell you that it is about the little things, and it's about the little things throughout the relationship and throughout building your pipeline as well, too, right? So it's not just in the beginning. It's about nuancing that experience over and over and over. My dad had an insurance guy that he used for over 30 years. And I always thought to myself, like, that's crazy. But then when my father died in 2016 at the funeral, when there was over 1,000 people in that room, and I didn't recognize half of them, and most of them came to me and said, I bought copiers from your dad from the time I opened my business until the time that he sold his. That's when it started to really ring true to me. And I understood better in those moments the impact that we have on people when we just give a shit, as Adam Snyder, one of my rebel coaches, likes to say, right? And it's simple, right? Like you're saying, it's so simple. Sometimes it's just doing a little bit of research on somebody and seeing like some of their initiatives or their hobbies, and it's not about like sending them a hockey puck because they like hockey. It's about giving them an experience around it, right? So for the copier, for example, and I've done this before, is that I got a guy an actual set of hockey sticks and rubber pucks. And then I gave him an instruction manual on how to use these hockey pucks and this stick to shoot the pucks at the copier every time it jammed. And then I told him in the instructions that this won't fix the machine, but it will create healing, emotional healing in that moment. And you'll at least feel better about it. But if you ever want to fix it, just call me and I'll take care of that for you. Right. Awesome. And it's right. And it's little things like that, dude. That's all it is. It's simple.
That's like super marketing, man. That's just like, as a salesperson, I think there's a bit of marketing in every salesperson, because you need to come up with your own messaging. And when you're starting off as a salesperson, like, you're doing outreach, typically cold outreach. And to do that, you need to come up with some form of messaging. Just try to be creative, and even if you have the possibility to work together with a marketing team, then great. But if not, like, you can be super creative yourself. Like, a lot of salespeople are good marketers, actually. Like, similar to what you just mentioned there, like you did like I would call that like a bespoke direct mail piece, where you got some pucks, and you got a hockey stick, and you got like a sheet where you wrote out some messaging on, and that's your campaign. And you triggered a mini campaign there, which created like something real special, but also like not recreating the wheel. But again, it's like it's this little marketing piece that salespeople have in them, I think.
Yes, I agree. And I can tell you that what you're saying is true from actual experience. from sitting with 18-year-old kids that are just starting to build their pipeline, like that young man that's in the chat was asking about, to 45-year-old guys that are rediscovering happiness inside of their sales walk. That as soon as they start thinking a little bit about what they are and who they are and what they want, right? That discovery and self-awareness of oneself, they can suddenly be aware of others. And in that process, they become extremely creative, whether they know it or not. Some people are still a little bit afraid of it. You know, they say, I don't know if anybody will like this, but here's an idea I had, right? But when it is not that young, I just saw it come in. What's up, Phil? It's okay, man. I'm 34, so I'm not that young either, right? But I'll tell you this, the question is this: what do we do when we're just getting started? Head over to crumpledletter.com, download my free crumpled letter, and use that. I'm going to tell you that right now. We've got kids all across the United States and adults all across the world that have used that letter to get into billion-dollar agencies and to get into the mom and pop restaurant that they're trying to sell to, right? Super, super, super simple stuff. And I see some of my friends are in here right now and they're throwing out the yeah, right? Because they've all had success with these things. Create experiences for your prospects and then go and build your pipe. Build it altruistically. Build it from the perspective of, I want to have relationships inside of my territory to make it a community. It's not going to be a community in the beginning. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. But I'll tell you this right now, for everybody listening going, oh, my boss isn't going to let me do this, because it's going to take too long. If your approach is this mindset, you will find instant gratification. I hate the word, but you will find it. You will absolutely find it, because people will recognize that you are different. People will recognize that this is somebody that I want to do business with, because no one in your community wants to be treated like a name on a list. It's that simple, right? And so imagine too, like the experience that we're going through with my slide deck, even the places I've been taking you. You saw this car and your motor skills lit up, right? It's about the psychology of what we're doing to people. I want you to feel like you're driving fast in this moment with me, but that you have a place where you're going and that you have a vision for it, that like you're hearing me express. Right. And so think of these things. Think about these things. Don't put yourself in a box either. Be willing to risk, because risk brings reward. Be willing to become uncomfortable, because when you become uncomfortable, you will truly find who you are. You will build something bigger than you ever thought that you could to begin, or in the first place. And really, we're at the end of the slides at this point. I wanted to show everybody this concept here. I know we got a few minutes at this point, so I wanted to see if we had more questions. But first, I wanted to kind of give people this idea of what a sales wanderer is, as we like to have coined it in the sales rebellion. A sales wanderer is somebody that is willing to risk and dares mighty things, like we just talked about. This concept of not being intimidated by your territory, not being intimidated by your buyer, because like I've said so many times, it's a community. A community is something that is not scary. I think of the park around the corner when you take your kids, right? Or you and your wife or your husband go and sit down on a bench and have lunch, right? Think of looking around and seeing all the other people that share your neighborhood with you, that share that park alongside you, right? Because they're living humans that are normal. The people in your territory watch Netflix and chill. The people in your territory eat ice cream way too much, sometimes for breakfast. The people in your territory struggle with certain things like addictions, right? Like self-doubt, right? The people in your territory are also amazing human beings as well too. And even the people that struggle from these things that I'm talking about, they're absolutely worth your time, right? Nobody is not worth your time. As soon as I started to accept that in my own walk, it didn't matter if I went to a place like the bike shop, because I knew I treated that person like they were worth my time, and I gave them the experience that they deserved. I didn't half-ass it. I didn't leave a card. I didn't drop off a brochure. I had things like these visuals in my backpack, right? Where you could catch me stabbing a copy machine or pulling a sword from a golden one in the middle of the woods. And the text on there says, every morning he wakes up believing this is his job. Imagine that comes across your desk in a boring, stale, monotonous industry that is a commodity-driven product. Imagine that comes across your desk. It's a wild thought, right? Because suddenly I am so much different than anything that anybody has ever dealt with inside of the realm of what I sell. And I have set myself apart. And it's not necessarily about, when I talk about setting myself apart, it's not about being so radical that people don't even recognize the real you, right? It's about being so authentic that you radically educate others through your authenticity. It's this idea of having a reason in general, which is something that I created inside of the Sales Rebellion, which is to radically educate and share one's narrative. That's the reason cheat sheet. If you ever are sitting in a bind and thinking, how do I draw some inspiration today? Share your narrative. What is a narrative? A narrative is a story. What does a story do? It activates the brain. It also tells people your relevance. It makes people feel familiar. Familiarity is a massive piece of the puzzle inside of psychology, inside of the way that people will interact with you. It also creates impact, right? Because it talks about things like the illness that your prospect is suffering from. I used to say, yeah, I help a couple different groups of folks. The most important being those that are shackled to that copy machine that's sitting behind them when I'm on the phone with them like this right now, because toner never shows up on time. Their sales rep is never available when they need them to be. And they feel like they're making a mortgage payment for a boat anchor. And 99% of people, when they hear those things, go, yeah, all three of those, right? And even if they don't, they think that's very relevant because maybe it's happened once and maybe they're happy in the moment, but you can still pull familiarity in those moments. And so think of nostalgia as well too, right? In the way that you tell a story and the way that you present this concept of illness and value and needs, right? It's an alignment process, essentially. So building a pipeline is all about the alignment that you can create with your prospect. It's all about how you can authentically, radically educate people. You want to blow your pipeline up. You want to turn it into a living, breathing ecosystem. Start treating people in this manner. Start expressing what it is that you truly want to do with them. You don't want 15 minutes on their calendar. You want to make money. And why do you want to make money? You want to make money because you want safety, right? Or maybe that fast car. Right? There's a lot of different focuses for some people around money. But at the end of the day, what you have to realize is that if you're building a kingdom and not a castle, people are going to benefit from that. And if you have an altruistic approach in the way that you look at things like that in your life, such as sitting back and saying, I want money, right? For what reasons? If you can communicate that in a way that speaks to your buyer, then you win, because they want to support you. Trust me when I tell you that a buyer buys from you because they want to support you. They want their product, as well too. They want it, and they want it from somebody that's going to be efficient, but they want to reward you if you've done a good job. There's plenty of transactions out there where people just go, all right, I guess we're going to try this. And they're sick and tired of doing that. And so when they get excited about signing paperwork, I mean, it is like literally like an endorphin rush for them to sign the paperwork in those moments. And we don't think about these things and we don't talk about them because it's not popular. What's popular is lighting cigars on fire with a wad of $100 bills, right? $1,000, right? That's what's popular in the sales world today. But again, like a new vision, right? And like I said, to build a kingdom, right? And tear down your castle.
That's amazing, man. Like it's so many points that ring through with me, basically what you said there. Like, it's so funny. Like even just before this call today, I spoke with a friend of mine who's the CEO of a company, and I won't name the company nor the prospect, but they're prospecting in, or they're pretty close to closing like a very, very big deal with a large enterprise. Okay. And I said to her, I said, well, like what's stopping it? She said, it's stuck with one particular person and it's been there for like 5 weeks. And we've managed to get like all of the other signatures and all of the other paperwork. Dealing with enterprises, it's sometimes tricky, but it's the biggest deal that they have. And in order to get it if they get that over the line, they're going to be way over quota. And if they don't get it over the line, they're going to be under quota, right? So it's one of these things where she's like, okay, well, what should I do? And I said, well, what's your relationship with the buyers? And so I don't have one. I said, well, you need to change that, because like it could be as simple as I said, like, look, I know this person in question comes from the marketing world. And I said, look, you are a marketer at heart. Now you're a CEO, but you also need to be a marketer and a salesperson. So why don't you find out who that person is, find out what their interests are, put together a bespoke direct mail package, which has your brand, their brand, and show them the key benefits. Similar to what you just mentioned there a couple of minutes ago, Dan. She was like, oh yeah, like I actually forgot about doing things like that. Things that like appear nice to be coming from me. And I said, and then you as a CEO need to pick up the phone and speak with that person afterwards and tell them how important this particular deal is, right? To the future of her company and so on, right? And it's similar to what you posted today on LinkedIn as well, Dale, when you were in this spiff or this competition to get to Vegas. That was you, right? That posted that on LinkedIn today. About, like Dale was posted on LinkedIn earlier. I don't know if people seen it, but he was just behind on winning like a competition with, in sales. Like if you got past over target, whoever got the most in sales would then go to get an all-inclusive trip over to Vegas. And to tell a long story short, basically the person that he ended up selling to, he ended up needing to be, what was it, 60K? You needed something, or 45K
40.
Was it?
Yeah, I had to beat 40. Yeah.
I had to beat 40. Ended up picking up the phone saying, hey man, I need you to do me a solid here. And they were like, yeah, sure, look, we'll look after you. And ended up signing a contract for 150K. So like, but that's the difference between creating that relationship and doing all of those little bits and pieces, being creative throughout the entire cycle. I think a lot of people forget about being creative, being authentic, as you mentioned a number of times, being honest, saying, you know what, if some stage in a specific cycle, you might say, hey, look, we're maybe not the right solution for you. Here's a different solution that might be of interest to you, or even giving tips and recommendations on other ways to go on different things. It makes you super authentic. And this community feel, I think, is really important now more so than ever. And I think we've touched on it a lot during the COVID-19 situation, that like being honest and open and helpful and so on. But I don't think anybody's really put it in the way it's about building a community within your prospect base. Like I haven't seen it described in that way. And I think it really perfectly like puts it into a nice package, because the thing was before, it was always like, okay, be nice and offer help and always be willing to help and so on. It didn't really have the commercial benefit behind it. Like people were saying, and eventually it might turn into something. But I think if you create a community, people lean on each other in the community and say, hey, this is the guy that has this particular tool, therefore I'm going to lean on him because he's been like, he's part of the community. So I think it's a super interesting way of putting it, Dale. So thank you for that, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of struggle even like saying this, to be honest with you, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is because I always trust my gut, which is that the reason that I posted that story this morning is what really will show you what community is all about. And that today is the birthday of the man that fulfilled that part, that promise to me, and helping me and literally started to change the trajectory of my life. Prior to that acquisition of my dad's company, probably the most I ever made was maybe $50,000. And that was like 1 year, right? It was like $27,000 a year after taxes because of everything that was happening, the recession, nobody buying, digging out of debt, having 20 grand on gas cards, credit cards, for gas stations just to survive. Right. And this man was one of the people that started to literally change my outcomes. And today's his birthday and he died earlier this year from cancer. And so it's important to remember these people, not just for what they did for you, but to honor who they were as humans. And so, some people probably know that story and they saw that and they know today is his birthday and they tip their hat to him. And because I hope to keep others' legacies alive more than just my own, just like my dad, right? Lost him to cancer, but I will always be in his shadow forever. And you will see me in it. You will know who he was. You will know the man that raised me and the man that molded what the Sales Rebellion is. It's important. And so thinking not just outside of the script and outside of the box, but thinking intentionally about what you're developing. Because destiny is what is at the end of that rainbow, right? Not luck or happenstance or circumstances in general, right? Actual destiny that you intentionally seek and that you intentionally find, throughout this process. So, I think there's a lot of great things that we talked about. There's a good question in here actually right now. If you don't mind, I'll answer it.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
So it said, hey, Dale, I know you said the crumpled letter is a great way to build your pipeline for people who are new to sales. What is a good way to reach out to prospects right now when it's not easy to get face-to-face with people due to the pandemic? Have any recommendations about how to still come across as sincere when using things like email or LinkedIn messages? So I got a couple of things I want to talk about. The first is around this idea of what are people going through what they're used to right now. Like people are calling right now going, hey, I hope everything's okay with you and your family. Right. I hope the pandemic isn't affecting, it's affecting everybody, right? Like all these talk tracks around this empathy play is stupid because empathy is authentic. It's not a talk track. Right. And so the last thing people want to hear right now is, I hope your family's safe. My CEO wants you to know that he loves you. Okay. The guy that I've been spending $9.99 with for 5 years, he's now concerned about my family and he loves me. Go. That's cool. So think bigger about these types of interactions that you're having with people. Think conceptually about being proactive in the conversations, right? You know, we had a really good resource, one of our Rebel resources that we were giving out at the beginning of the pandemic, and that we actually evolved throughout the pandemic as well too. And one of the things that we had in there were email templates. And one of the best ones was curated by one of my squadron leaders, which are my Rebel coaches, David Weiss. David Weiss is a badass. If anybody is on LinkedIn, connect with David Weiss. He's actually one of the top dogs over at outreach.io. David Weiss had created an email where he basically said, hey, if your life's anything like mine right now, you've got new employees. I've got two. One of them is about 6 years old, and he's running around with his shirt off asking if he can eat the Cheetos that are sitting on my desk that are my snack, and won't shut up. You know, and those are the types of things that make people feel a little bit more familiar to what's going on, right? A little bit more excited about what it is that they see, right? Inside of what it is that you're presenting. And so when you pick up the phone and call somebody, don't tell them, I hope your family's safe, right? Because what if someone died in their family? You are going to be the worst call that they had that day. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. I'm still grieving, right? You know, so you got to be careful about those types of things, about the way that you speak to people from that perspective. So what I would say about being proactive is think about the narrative that's being played out and that's dead and that's old and that sucks and that nobody wants to hear in the first place. And think about, if you read that email, what would you say? If you got that phone call, how would you feel in the first place? Because awareness of self will help you to be aware of others. And so sitting back and not making a talk track around it as well too is extremely important, but being very loose. Paul Castaneda, who I think I saw him in the chat here a few times, he's the Rebel director inside of the Sales Rebellion. And we do improv classes that he puts on. And he actually put my first improv class ever on back when I was first learning sales. So talk about full circle, right? But he teaches the concept of ad lib essentially inside of those, yes and instead of yes but, and flowing through a conversation with people and understanding a couple things. Like if you're calling on somebody in construction, the world would tell you that construction is pretty busy right now. That's a very relevant conversation to have. It's very familiar. Hey, Dan, what's up, man? I know that you guys are probably staying super busy, says the New York Times and everybody, but I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. What do you guys got going on? Is everybody working remotely? Has it been a pain in the ass? Oh, my name's Dale, by the way. I work with a company called the Sales Rebellion. You probably never heard of us. That's why people call me the best kept secret in sales training, right? You know, like giving people an experience. Again, it's a very simple concept. It's really just fluent conversation. Would you speak to this person that you're on the phone with trying to sell something the same way you would speak to somebody at a party that was holding a red Solo cup and was like, hey, $5 and you can get into this tap? You know, would you be like, let me work a deal here with this guy, right? You know, hey, I'm offering financial peace and wanted you to take 15 minutes out of your calendar on Monday to get with. I mean, you wouldn't have those types of conversations. You'd be like, what's up, dude?
Exactly.
What's good, man?
I fully agree. Like it goes back to, again, like everybody talks about personalization, and I think when people hear personalization nowadays, they think, oh God, I mean, does that mean like, hey, bracket open, first name, bracket closed, great to hear from company, bracket open, bracket closed? You know, like it's like, no, that's not personalization. Personalization to me is like, what you just hit the nail on the head with, like create an experience, give people like a warm, fuzzy feeling when they speak with you, and then they will want to speak with you further, right? Now, people might like go a little bit back up the funnel. I spoke with an SDR the other day, and he asked me, he said, like, I'm finding it hard to get through to people. How do I like break down a couple of doors a little bit better? And I said, well, one thing that was really cool that I seen like an SDR dude that used to work for me was he used to just write handwritten notes to people. Okay, like he literally put pen to paper and put it in the post. Okay, now I know at the moment it's a little bit tricky. There are ways of finding this out, but he just like, he did something a little bit different. I think that the story in this is that he was doing something a little bit different that cost him no extra time or money at all, but he was writing like handwritten notes to C-level executives saying, hey, I noticed this about your website. What do you think about this? And just like letting it float, right? Pushing it out there, letting it float, see what happens. And then some C-levels were like, shit, that was intuitive, man. How did you know? Like, I haven't gotten a handwritten note since I was 15 years old from a pen pal, you know? And he was like, yeah, I just thought, you know, I'd reach out and tell you what I think rather than send an email, you know? So just be clever about how you do your outreach. And that's how you get the foot in the door initially, you know?
Truth. Yeah. I would say too to people based on that, like putting anything snail mail right now is still going to make it to people. There's a team that I'm overseeing actually doing training for right now that this morning they started a blitz day and they're on the phones, but they mailed letters, to everybody that they're calling on. They mailed boxes even too, which is another secret inside of the rebellion. It's not much of a secret really. I mean, like once you hear it, you're like, oh, that makes sense. Right. But again, concepts around experiences for people. Cause I think what you're talking about too is the heart of the matter. Like when someone sees that you took time out of your day to create this thing for them, they love it. Handwritten notes are the key to good, successful relationships in business. After a meeting, after you close the sale, right, that they should be nuanced throughout the entire process. But also, think about this, like you were talking about, well, they would put it in the post. Well, think of this. What if you sent an email correspondence to somebody, you're off screen and then you come on, you're like, hey, what's up? You probably never got a LinkedIn message like this before. And it just like pops right into a full screen of your handwritten note. And then it pops back to you and you go, yeah, I actually wrote that, but I didn't put it in the mail because I don't know if you're at home with the kids, absolutely loving your life, or if you're at the office still. So I figured this would be the best way to get in front of you. And I can't wait to hear from you. And make it simple, make it sweet. Give people an action item at the end of it that's not based around like, can I get 15 minutes of your time? Just tell people to call you back. Hit me up, right? We do it with our crumple butter as well too. We do digital versions of it for some of the people that are in very quarantined areas still. New York is only at like 10% capacity in businesses at this point, right? So in the city, so there is a myriad of ways that people can do these things. They just have to think creatively and get outside of their headspace.
That's amazing, man. I mean, you're a true marketer at heart, man.
Yes.
It's not pretend to be a salesperson. Come on, you're a marketer. Come on over to the dark side, man.
I am. From the very beginning, I said, why don't we use marketing in this industry? And my dad was like, you got me, man. I don't know. And so, do you want to build it? And I built it. And then, we were able to sell this company from the success that we created. And then that success turned into taking an $8 million organization to 25 in the course of 6 years with me at the helm. And those are the types of things that we led with, everything I'm talking about here, which is this concept of that marketing is the number one way to drive curiosity. Curiosity is the number one feeling that people would get, emotion that drives people to bypass this thing up here that is the literal wall that you keep running into, and to instead say, you need to make this work because I like this, right?
Sure, for sure. Hey, look, man, we're coming to the end, but I just want to see if anybody else has any questions. There's been a lot of people in the chat, but like we have 2 minutes left, so we probably have time for one more question. If anybody wants to just post in quickly. But while we're waiting for people, there was one thing that you did mention that was like super relevant actually, was looking at people that are using competitors' products. And this is something like people, again, the person I spoke with today said, oh, it's quite difficult to find that out. Yes, it can be difficult, but once you find that out, it can be so much easier in your outreach. So like if it's systematically easier if you're selling a digital product, because typically digital products will have some form of tag that's just firing on their site. And there's a number of scripts or different things that push out like scrapers to understand, okay, what tech is being used on which sites. And then you can say, okay, look, all of these different websites are using this particular technology. That technology is a competitor of mine. Therefore, I can go chase all of these different accounts or these different sites. So that makes it pretty easy from that perspective. But there's always a way of getting those lists of those companies which are using those things. So I think a tip from my side would be like, based on what Dale just said, like go chase those companies that are using a competitor product and see what they're unhappy with, Why wouldn't you? Like they're already in the market for something, They may just not know that they're in a buying cycle for it. Put them into one, So we had one here from Patrick. What do you think of automated LinkedIn cold email approach for prospecting? What do you think?
I don't think about that. And this is like the automated approach in general is not going to have enough information inside of it to make it relevant to a prospect in a cold email. Cold emails are best done through familiarity and relevance as a playbook. And yes, it takes a little bit more time, but if you just want to email 25 people and have a better chance of getting 25 reactions to some capacity, even if it's a no, then you don't want to automate it. You don't want to be pushing toward even if it's easy to specifically to do, right? And you send it out to 250 people and you hear back from one or two. Well, listen, you've got 248 people left that you haven't had a conversation with. So why even do that kind of crap? It's just going to ruin the reputation that we've just been talking about that you need to build in the first place, if they remember you to begin with. But trust me, when you annoy somebody enough, they remember. It's happened to me twice in the last week where I've gotten hit on multiple sides and multiple fronts through an automation. And I'm like, this looks familiar. And then go back and look and find them in this other place and go, this sucks. I hate this. I don't want anything to do with this. So I would tell people to have, if you had a specific curiosity laden script that was speaking around something, again, that was creative, and then right above it, a tiny blip about something about that you found out about this person. It takes 2 minutes to do this. And if you want to learn how, hit up Chris Watson inside of the Sales Rebellion and ask him. He is the king of finding all the information out about you within a couple minutes before he ever talks to you in the first place. You know, he'll get you on the phone and be like, so I see you lost all your money back in 1997 here via this article that says that you went bankrupt. That's pretty crazy. And you went to jail? That's pretty crazy too. Yeah, I mean, like, these are the internet is a powerful thing, but also LinkedIn will tell you specifics about an attribute that the person has or something that they focus on inside of their business. And then you can take the surface level statement of and turn into something personal, right? And it's simple, and it only needs to be 50 characters when you write something like that for them to start with, and then they can hit that more automated concept. I'm okay with that. I still don't fully, I don't fully endorse it, but yeah, that would be my answer.
I agree with you there, mate. I think, that cold outreach, even if it's done well, can still be pretty shitty, to be fair. Like, I've got one, I'm not going to mention the name of them, but fairly reputable review site. And it rhymes with must trial it. I'm going to, and I've had their sales rep like drip out emails to me about 4 times a week. And like, it's getting like, as the cadence goes on, it's getting more and more aggressive, it feels like, even in the language that's being used, that I'm just like, this is just like, I didn't like it at the start. Now I'm starting to really hate it, you know? Yeah. And I'm just trying to see, I'm just waiting. I'm taking like screenshots of all the mails and being like, oh yeah, I'm getting real pissed with this, you know? It's like riling me up, you know? I wonder what's going to come next to piss me off even more, you know? But you need to be real careful with that. And I think, yeah, just to go on what Phil asked there. So 1-to-1 is always the best approach, by far the best approach, by far. Yeah.
Truth.
But guys, look, we've come to the end of our session. Dale, thank you so much, mate. It's been really, really interesting speaking with you. It's been great fun. People can get you on LinkedIn, I guess, right?
Yes, I can. LinkedIn.com/IN/Copier Warrior, or just type in Dale Dupree. You'll find me pretty quick.
Perfect. As well as that, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, guys. Andy Culligan. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again, Dale, and all the best for your coaching this weekend, mate.
Cheers, bro. Appreciate you very much. Thanks for having us on.
Bye-bye.